Hi, everyone. Welcome to Me, You, and Who. On today's episode, we are speaking with Dr. Daniel Skora. He is a physician at Fertility Specialists of Texas, and he serves as the medical director of the third party and LGBTQ plus services. It was a fantastic conversation. We talk a lot about what it looks like for a clinic to be inclusive of the LGBTQ community. He is just a wealth of knowledge for those that are taking part on their fertility journey. He is a new dad himself. His has sweet little twin boys with his husband, and so it was fun to hear him talk about those sweet boys and hear his experience, not only, of course, as a reproductive endocrinologist, but also as a new dad. So please enjoy Dr. Daniel Skora. Me, you, and who? Who knew it would take more than two people to have a baby? In a world where infertility is no longer a taboo topic, this podcast will take you through all the different aspects of surrogacy and egg donation through the lens of many who walk this journey in different ways. My name is Whitney Hall, and I am a two-time surrogate, now turned surrogacy coordinator for Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, the very agency I used when I chose to carry for two amazing families. With this podcast, it is our goal to help guide and support you as you learn about what it takes to grow a family in an alternative way, as well as hear inspiring and beautiful stories of how this path has changed lives forever. We can't wait for you to hear about just one more way happy families are created every day. Well, thank you again for taking the time. I know, my gosh, you're a new dad. You just finished work. Like you have so much happening in your life. So I really do appreciate you doing this. Thank you so, so, so much.
Yeah, I apologize in advance if you hear babies crying in the background, but
Oh,
but
never apologize. Never, never, never. This is life. This is what we all are working towards, right?
that's right. Yeah.
Well, okay, so what led you to doing just, infertility as your specialization in the first place? How did all of that get started?
Yeah, well, it's a longer story. So in medical school, I was one of those people who really loved everything.
Yeah.
I changed what I wanted to be like 5 times. And then eventually I did my OB rotation at the end of my third year. I fell in love with it. I loved the variety of stuff um, that I was able to do. Um, and, you know, Then I did residency, and when residency, I did my infertility rotation. I did do a fertility rotation in medical school as well, and away rotation in
Sure.
fertility, and I enjoyed it. But then in residency, I really got more into it, and I really love the patient population.
Mhm.
I always say, like, that most people are kind of afraid of the fertility population because they are very goal-directed, driven people generally. But I love that actually. I like
Yeah.
feeling like I'm on a team with my patients rather than often in medicine you're working against or contrary to what your patient wants or wants to do,
Mm.
right? And in
Mhm.
fertility, it's really teamwork. You're really working together to get to a common goal, and you really feel that in fertility as well. So
Yeah.
I think that's the main reason why I chose fertility.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So, obviously, Fertility Specialist of Texas, or FST, as we,
Mhm.
because IVF, of course, has to have every acronym in the world. Um, you guys were all at the forefront of, just welcoming LGBTQ plus patients and, just things like that. So, what questions do you kind of encourage patients to ask a clinic if maybe they are not, lucky enough to have an FST around them? What would you encourage them to ask, their clinic or their physicians when they are looking for kind of that inclusive
Yeah,
clinic?
that is a great question. And there's even within the Dallas Fort Worth area, there are like 15 clinics or something
Sure.
crazy like that. And
Uh-huh.
I always tell my LGBT friends, inside outside of the metroplex, I tell them, every LGBTQ person pretty much has to utilize fertility services.
Sure.
So if you are researching fertility clinics and you go on their website and there is not an aspect of their website that is not devoted to LGBTQIA plus care, that's a red flag, right? Because
Mm,
they are not orienting themselves to a huge part of the market. I'm not even talking about inclusivity. I'm talking about just money. We're talking a base level here. They want to
sure.
make money. They should be advertising to the LGBTQ plus community. From a higher level, obviously, you also want to find a clinic that's super inclusive as well,
Yeah.
right? And so the more of that there is, the more likely you are going to encounter an inclusive environment. If you nowadays go to see a clinic's website and there is
Mhm.
literally nothing about LGBTQ care, nothing about reciprocal IVF, nothing about egg donor or egg sperm, nothing about surrogacy, nothing,
Yeah.
that is an indicator. That indicates to you that they do not either care about that part of the population or do not cater to that part of the population. Now,
Mm,
that could just be, it's a one-off clinic with one doctor and they don't have a huge infrastructure available to create that website. But in the
mhm.
majority of places, that's not it. It's that they're not interested in that kind of care because
Okay.
either A, because of moral beliefs, either or B, it does require, especially when you're talking about egg donors and surrogates and things like that, it requires a lot of infrastructure that a lot of smaller clinics just don't have. Right. And
Yeah.
so one of the reasons I chose my clinic was that it already was very involved in LGBTQ care. We're one of the two bigger clinics in Dallas Fort Worth that are really heavily invested in the LGBTQ community, et cetera. And, that was something that really attracted me to my clinic when I was looking for
Sure.
a
And
job.
when was that established with FST?
So FST is 17 years old now,
Okay.
and our founding partner, Dr. Goldstein, he's been involved with LGBTQ stuff for a very, very long time.
Mm,
Well before I got there, he's been involved with men having babies, was on the board of that before I joined the practice, et cetera. And that was something that
sure.
was really, attractive to me as someone who was coming in who knew that they really wanted to be involved in the community and
Yeah.
do that kind of work, to have kind of that groundwork is already set. It made it a lot
Yeah.
easier for me to really be able to flourish rather than having to build it myself.
No, for sure. That makes a ton of sense. So, website is a huge indicator. And then let's say, okay, we have a website. Yeah, it looks like there's something going on. What would be another indicator as you're just walking into the practice?
Yeah, it's this is a touchy subject because even my clinic is not 100% great at this. Some parts of the
Okay.
country are some parts of the country are much better about kind of all the forms having, non-identifying pronouns and
Mm,
non-specific partner one, partner two stuff. And
sure.
we're moving towards that, but it does require a lot of infrastruccer change to get that kind of stuff. But I think just being sensitive to the fact that you might not be in a heterosexual relationship from the get-go, when you talk to the new patient scheduler on the phone, when you come into the office, that you just feel that where you are, it's not something abnormal. It's not an abnormal place. You don't feel out
Yeah.
of place. They're
Yeah.
not shocked to see a female couple or a male couple. You know, it's a feeling that you would get right away. Even when you talk on the phone with the new patient scheduler, if they're confused about the situation, they don't understand it,
Mm,
they haven't been primed for the situation, which is not good. It shouldn't be something that's the first time, right? It should be something that is all the
sure.
time. I see so many same-sex couples every month, right? And it's just something that is constant. It's also biased, obviously. I'm a gay provider, and that is, and that they come to me for that specifically. But
Uh-huh.
you also have to, teach your staff as well. We have over 100 employees in our office, and we do monthly meetings where the doctors give talks about different medical topics, and I talk about LGBTQ care, about inclusion, about all of that stuff, because I want to make sure, because often in these clinics there's a small group of people that do a majority of the LGBTQ care. They do the third
Okay.
party, which is, egg donors, surrogates, and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
It's a smaller group of people within the practice, right? And so some
Right.
people may never hear about surrogacy. They may never really know anything much about egg donors in the context of not a woman who's 45 using an egg donor, right? So
Right.
I think it's really important that we talk, and we just want people to feel like they're wanted there, that they're accepted, and that it's not an abnormal situation.
No, absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. So definitely, just paperwork, things like that. Um, is there what would you say are maybe like some additional barriers that people in the community, in the LGBTQ community might experience either when they're choosing a clinic or really just as they're going on their fertility journey?
some clinics will require marriage before treatment, which can be an issue. Not as much anymore as it used to be. I have
Sure.
found with some same-sex female couples, there are, depending what state you're in, there could be alternate legal things that need to happen in terms of adopting the baby after one is carried and born, etc.
Sure.
That's state to state dependent.
Yes, of
Um,
course.
what else? Um, and some places just they don't want to, and this is horrible to say. Some places just don't want to treat LGBTQ patients, and that's is a
Mhm.
terrible thing to
Yeah.
say. But better to know that up front than to be giving your money to an organization that doesn't believe that you should either be married or that you should be able to have children.
No, for sure, for sure. And then you would hope to find out about that prior to even exchange of money because you've done all of this research, looking, experiencing, calling, etc.
Yes, yes,
No, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So, okay, you are, as you said, you're a member of the LGBTQ community, and you're a new dad to
yeah,
twins. I
yeah.
have twins myself, so welcome to the twin club.
Thank you.
So you've experienced, obviously you experienced, your fertility doctor, so you've gone through it from that side, and now you've experienced, the whole situation as a patient. And I know I'm sure it was quite unique because you do work for the clinic. But like, what about your journey to fatherhood do you wish maybe just all intended parents could have experienced, especially those part of the LGBTQ community?
Well, I just think everyone should be able to. Yes, obviously, as a provider in this space, it was much easier in every
Sure.
aspect for me to get everything moving forward, financial, all the things. It was just a lot easier and faster. Like we started in February of 22, and the babies were just born in April of 23, which is a very, very fast situation compared to most journeys for two men. So,
Yeah.
on average, it's more like 2 years generally. But you know, I think I learned a lot as a doctor, as a person, going through it with my husband, mostly like my relationship with my husband, and like
Sure.
teaching him along the way and making sure he understood what was going on, but not too much. There was one point our surrogate was 28 weeks pregnant. She had some preterm contractions, and in my mind, I'm like losing my mind. I'm freaking out about a 28-week
Sure.
twin babies in the NICU. I'm trying to keep it cool for him because I've seen that before. I know what that means, and he hasn't. He
Mhm.
doesn't really know what that means, and not trying like being like, okay, you need to be at the hospital with me just in case, and not trying to freak him out so much the way I am in my head.
Of
So
course, of course. Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. That makes a ton of sense. So was there anything just about your experience again, that was unique to your clinic experience that you would, just obviously, of course, every clinic has their own style, every RE has their own
yeah.
style. Is there anything that maybe you would, or just a piece of advice, to, the professionals maybe starting out or maybe working, building that third party program more that maybe you would say, would be helpful to them?
I was that we were very lucky. That our whole
Yeah.
process was super smooth. I always tell people, my male couples especially, there's going to be a hiccup along the way. There's going to be a speed bump of some kind. Some are
Yeah.
larger than others, right? But we really didn't have any. So we were very, very lucky along the entire way. We were
Mm-hmm.
really happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of professionals who are interested in really getting it more into the space and providing that environment for patients, I do really believe that you have to devote time and investment into this because it
Mm.
takes people. These are not, especially surrogacy cases, they are not simple cases. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
moving parts, and you have to invest in people to learn how to do it, or if they don't already do it. Often I would recommend hiring someone who has experience, at least to lay the groundwork for you in your
Sure.
department, that they can train people to be your third party coordinators, et cetera. But you need someone who knows FDA, all of that kind of stuff, because it is complicated and you can really get in trouble with the FDA if you don't do it properly.
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely. So what would be, you said, just hiring obviously someone who's part of that would be another resource that would be helpful.
Um, I would say conferences that are
Yeah.
doing this kind of practice. There's an egg donor conference, there's seeds. even going to a Men Having Babies conference to meet people and learn about the process. Probably all of those conferences, you would learn a lot. You would extend your network, et cetera, so that you are developing best practices for as you move forward.
No, for sure. That makes a ton of sense. How would you feel, from an agency perspective? How do you feel like an agency, like ours, Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, how do you feel like we could be, that a helpful resource and just supportive of, especially our intended parents, but also, maybe a gestational carrier, or egg donor that is part of the community?
When you're doing this work, you find the agencies that are good. So there there are a lot of egg donor agencies and a lot of surrogacy agencies around the country, and they are essentially unregulated. Okay, so as a result of that, there are really good ones and there are really ones that don't do a lot. They do very, very few cases, they're new maybe, or they just don't have high volume. And as a result of that, it's just a very different experience working with them. And
Sure.
and as a clinic, or you learn which ones are willing to work with you and help you, right? When we have an egg donor with your agency and there's an issue with them being able to get monitoring, et cetera, some egg donor agencies are just like, that's your job to figure that out. And others are really involved and make sure everything gets done. We get the reports, et cetera. Luckily, you guys are like that, you know. But sometimes we're in the breeze trying to figure it out. But an egg donor agency really should be coordinating all of that stuff, right? Because that's what they're being paid to do, right? Versus
Right.
if you use an internal egg donor with a clinic, you're paying us to do that stuff for you,
Yeah.
right? So um, it's really, you will learn as you create your program, as you work more and more in the space, which places are going to help you and which places are just out to make money, right? and
Yeah.
and and so I always find that I tell my intended parents over and over again, like, I don't care what clinic you end up with. I want you to be with me, but that doesn't, in the end, all I want is for you to have a baby. That is my number one goal. And these are the things, that places that I know will get you that goal, right? And so um, other places I can't say if they're going to, right? So
Mm, sure, sure. No, that makes a ton of sense. So really what I'm hearing you say is, as much involvement as possible, of course, which we definitely, of course take that on. Is there anything unique? I mean, we just do that across the board, but is there any unique thing that you feel as though would be, I guess, extra support or, for those that are, in a same sex relationship or a single person that happens to be, LGBT or just anything like that, that would be helpful, really, maybe for all third parties, whether it be a psychologist, an attorney, agency.
no, I think just offering those support services and resources to those people, right? Like, it takes a village to make this happen. And I personally don't have the time to be doing a therapy session with every intended parent, right? But that is an important thing. And I realize that's an important thing, which is why we support and we give resources to give those intended parents those resources to speak to people
Yeah.
if they desire to. And I think it's about giving those resources. I tell my intended parents when they come to see me the first time, most of my intended parents use our internal egg donors because it's less expensive, right? But here are five, egg donor agencies that we work with routinely, because sometimes you're not going to find what you want, or if you want something very specific.
I mean, it sounds like with every aspect of it, it really is just finding those best resources and the research that's involved, especially in finding those that are supportive of the community. Um, and that's just across the board. So, and that's
Yeah.
fantastic that your clinic provides those resources. And it sounds like that's really just one of the biggest, things that other clinics could do to be supportive, especially to those in the LGBTQ community for sure.
But
Is there,
it's not just about providing resources. It's also being a supporter of the community, right?
yeah.
We march in the Pride Parade, we exhibit in the Pride Parade, we give money to Men Having Baby, like, we give money to different organizations involved in LGBTQ causes, free
Mm.
services, et cetera, right? So it's about being a supporter of the community, not just a leech of the community too, right? Because it's
Oh, I
very
love that.
it's obvious to see when someone is not, when someone is doing this for the wrong reasons, right? And so
Yeah.
I think obviously having kids of my own and being a member of the community gives me a little bit of street cred, which is good. But it's, I hope that people realize I was doing it for that reason beforehand as well.
No, for sure. Well, and that kind of brings me, I feel like every Pride, every time Pride Month comes around, you see, all kinds of different, whether it be, a big box store or,
Yeah.
whatever, like everything turns rainbow.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's really important to maybe make that extra call, do that extra research. Do they just have, the little rainbow on their website in June, or, what more is happening? What does that support look like? So you said, one way is your clinic not only of course supports by doing what you do, which is creating families, but you also support the LGBTQ community.
Yes. All year, not just at the beginning, not just in June, all year. And obviously there's more opportunities to do things in June in June.
Sure.
But that are more visible, but all year long you're doing that and thinking about it and being involved in organizations that really help the community throughout the year. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's huge. That's huge. Well, I don't want to take up, too much more of your time because I know you have those sweet little babies to get back to, and you're getting phone calls and, all kinds of things. But and we've talked a lot about just the different aspects of this, but is there anything that you feel like we missed or that you feel like others should hear when it, just comes to supporting, advocating, and working with the LGBTQ plus patients?
I think, I think the patient population is very specific but also very diverse, right? And so you need to
Hmm.
be have an open mind to that diversity as well, and go into those conversations, you know with an open heart. That's really what it is, right?
Yeah.
And accept them for where they are and what their goals are, and try to make those goals a reality if they are possible, right? And so
Hmm.
we are a wealth of information and knowledge that we can give to our patients, but they also are teaching us along the way as well. And I think it's really important that you take those lessons and incorporate them into your everyday practice.
Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. Do you have something like just off the top of your head how you've done that personally?
Well,
Whether as a physician or.
uh, I wouldn't say necessarily personally, but you know, I've been seeing more trans patients in the last couple of years than I did beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
and the unique aspects of trans care, not necessarily care, but of dealing with couples with who are one of the partners is trans or both are trans, and talking about pronouns,
Mm-hmm.
and putting alerts in your chart so that the people in your office know, because I've lived all over the country, but there are people in my office who have never met a trans person before, right? And
Sure.
so, or have never interacted with one. And so, just normalizing that for everyone and making sure that everyone is on the same page and moving forward. We want to be a center where people of any background, any sexual orientation feel completely comfortable coming, and they don't feel like they're out of place.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. I love that. That's so fantastic. Okay, I have one final question for you. It's a fun one.
Okay. Okay.
Um, for anyone that knows me and my poor colleagues, they see me all the time on a meeting and I always have my cup of coffee. So, what filled your cup this morning?
This
Literally
morning,
or figuratively, it can be silly or it can be sweet. But yeah, what filled your cup this morning?
literally black coffee. I drink black coffee with a little stevia. That's every
Uh,
morning.
Gorgeous.
Figuratively holding my babies before I go to work filled my cup. So
Oh, the sweet little guys. How old are they now?
6 weeks today. Yeah,
Oh my gosh, they're so fresh and new.
they are. And
Oh
I
my
felt so
god.
sad I had to go back to work after 2 weeks. But I still have my cuddle times with them, so it's good.
That's good cuddle times. Okay, well, we'll let you get to your cuddle times as much as you
Thank you.
absolutely can. So, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really, really super appreciate you.
No, it's
And
my
thank you just,
pleasure.
yeah, thank you so much for just the wealth of knowledge that you are. So, if people wanted to research FST specifically, where
Yep.
would they go?
fertilitytexas.com is our website.
fertilitytexas.com. Okay,
You
perfect.
can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Skora Fertility as well. Dr. Doctor. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Dr. Skora. I really, really appreciate you. And you have and give those little boys some cuddles for me.
I will. Have a good day.
Thank you. You as well. All right. Bye.
You have just finished listening to an episode of Me, You, and Who. To find out more about egg donor and surrogate solutions, go to www.createahappyfamily.com.